Hello interwebs, welcome to, hold on a sec, I've got to read this off the screen, it's a really long title. Two guys smack talking about tech for YouTube channel stats, the web show, episode 1, the pilot Menace. I'm not doing a retake of that. Welcome to our new podcast. I am Graham from Adamant IT, and with me today is Caradog Brody, who is a good friend of mine and one of the Discord admins. Say hello.
Hello.
There we go. So this is our new podcast. This is the pilot show. We're testing the format today, so it's going to be rough as guts. But here we are. This is kind of a knockoff of the Linus Tech Tips WAN show, but also Caradog and I have been threatening to do something like this for a long time. Because now and then when we're in just voice chats or when we're just hanging out together, having a drink or something like that, we get on to discussions about tech and we talk about things that we both think are really interesting. And at this point, the computer I was recording on just blue screen, so that's an awesome start to this series. Okay, so we've got a list of topics to talk about today. There's a couple of them that Caradog and I came up with together. And then also we did a quick shout out in the Adamant IT Discord in the Patreon room. And we got some ideas from the Adamant IT Patreons for stuff that we could talk about, of just random other stuff. So we're just going to go down this list in no particular order and probably, in all probability, go wildly off topic. So, Caradog, have you got a favourite on this list that you want to start out with first?
I feel like we should go for the ones that have no correct answer to start with.
Ah, okay.
Because that way we can't be wrong.
So which do you think that one is then?
Oh, simple things like why cold cathodes are definitely better than RGB.
Okay, so this was one that you pitched. You said this to me on Saturday when you were visiting, and we were dicking around with my PC, where we were possibly going to record a show like this actually, but that day went horrendously wrong as far as I'm concerned, although we did actually get everything done. Yeah, because of RGB. That's true, actually. Saturday was ruined because of RGB. And as such, Caradog did pitch the idea of how cold cathodes were so much better than RGB. And I got mixed feelings about this. I don't know, because I think both of us remember. Now, here's the thing. It's no secret, Caradog, you don't like RGB, do you?
No. I'm very much one of the people who's, if you want it, fine, but stop festooning my products with it. Stop adding it to everything.
Yes.
I don't need RGB on my SSD. I don't need RGB on a random tiny little bit of my graphics card. I don't need a random little twiddly light somewhere on the motherboard. If you're going to give me RGB on the motherboard, make it so it's the entire motherboard and it's balanced and it actually looks good.
Yeah.
And then allow me to turn it off.
There's a hierarchy of RGB, like a tiering list, which actually came up in the Adamant IT Discord, actually. Someone had a link to that for RGB tiering, and it had all the different components that go in a computer. You could arrange them from S tier down to E tier or something like that. And that was quite an interesting one to do, actually, because I tiered that list. I made a version of that one that I thought was quite appropriate. And certainly very, very low down on my list were things like, again, SSDs, which definitely do not need to be RGB. But high up on that list were things like keyboards, and just like the case, which I do think, or fans, which I think need RGB on them. I like RGB, however, I do agree that it needs to be done tastefully. And also I do agree that bad RGB is the worst. And a real amazing example of that, actually, is the MSI Mystic Light. Now, MSI Mystic Light is actually the brand name for MSI's RGB in general. It's just called MSI Mystic Light, in the same way that Asus is Aurora Sync and Gigabyte is RGB Fusion and so on. However, a lot of MSI's motherboards have what they call the Mystic Light, which is a row of LEDs in the top right of the motherboard behind the motherboard. And it's just an accent light. Yeah,
like the panel. They don't actually illuminate anything
yeah,
other than a bit of metal
yeah.
that's covered up.
And most of the time you can't see it because in that exact spot the ATX cable is going across it all anyway. So it's a really stupid light that you cannot see and is not bright enough to be effective, and it's really frustrating. As the polar opposite of that, one of my favourite motherboards is the one that I recently took out of my rig, which was a Gigabyte Z370 Aorus Elite, which had RGB all over it. It had a big RGB strip in the top right, the DDR slots illuminated. It had some RGB LEDs buried in between the VRMs. The PCI Express 16 slots lit up. The chipset heatsink was backlit. And the audio separation line was illuminated as well. And it was all RGB, and it was all individual zones that you could control. So the whole board had lighting zones on it that illuminated. The only problem with that is that it aged very badly and the white balance on it was bad. So like if you set the whole board to white, some areas were like really cold, almost blue white kind of thing, while other areas were a really warm yellowish white, which made it really, really difficult to get it to look right. And it was a constant source of frustration. If you set it to an easy color like red, it was fine. And that's actually why the current color scheme on that computer is red accents with purple wash light. However, yeah. However, I like having all of my RGB set to just white, because just having everything on white is actually a really pretty look. But if your whites aren't balanced, it just looks naff. So yeah, that's super annoying. So to get back to the original question of why cold cathodes were better, well, the thing. Okay, well, firstly, I'm going to tell you what I liked and disliked about cold cathodes, and then you can tell me what you like and dislike about cold cathodes. What I like about cold cathodes was just simply the amount of light they produce. You stick a 12-inch cold cathode in a... And actually, we should probably preface this for those of you who actually don't know what a cold cathode looks like. So hold on a sec while I actually bring some stuff up. Caradog, why don't you tell me what you like about cold cathodes while I actually get some examples up?
Yes. I was going to say, for those of you in the audience who aren't as experienced...
For those of you who are 12. Well, how old do they need to be to not know what cold cathodes look like?
To have been born after the year 2000. So that makes people 20. Oh, no.
I wish I hadn't asked that question. Moving on, what do you like about cold cathodes?
Oh, no. Yes. I liked the simplicity. I liked the fact that it was very much a case of, here are cold cathodes. You have coloured ones, as in standard visible ones, or you have UV ones. That's it. Done. And it was very simple. There was no control software. There was no funky channel 1 control on control box, channel 2 control on control box. It was on, off, big clicky switch. End of. And it was very much a case of, it was very simple and it just worked. And then I like the UV stuff because the talent and skill with it came out when people started painting UV reactive paint on components. So, just tracing the edges around like parts of a graphics card, or, highlighting particular parts of a RAM module or something. And it was a case of the skill came out there in the painting, as opposed to who can spend the most money on Corsair or NZXT.
I'd agree with that, actually. Yeah, it was a lot harder to make use of them. Quite often, you actually needed several of them, and, well, in a way, similar to LEDs, positioning was everything. But I think that one of the best things about it was just simply that the amount of light they produced. You could, you stick in a 12-inch cold cathode and just bam, it just lit up the inside of your case. And because there was so much light, it just bounced around the case really well as well.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't have a proper shadow, you didn't really have any issues. Whereas by comparison, LEDs do produce a lot of shadows, which makes it very difficult to get even lighting. The big disadvantage of cold cathodes was that, like, the photos that I was just showing there are quite flattering, but quite often you'd have a very washed out color. The colors weren't nearly as vibrant as LEDs are by modern comparison, and also over time it would fade, so it would get worse. And of course, you needed the inverter, so you had the little inverter driver box, which you had to bury somewhere as well. Although, to be honest, RGB needs your controller box anyway, so that swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I don't know. There's something nostalgic about cold cathodes, and definitely the UV ones were something really special. When UV cold cathodes done right was a really special look that was that I've never seen recaptured with LEDs, actually, because you can get UV LEDs. That's not difficult to find, but you never see that because obviously there's no UV in RGB. So UV is a look that we actually don't see very often anymore.
Yeah,
That's got me to. I kind of want to revisit that actually, and I have actually just thought of that. I've just thought, actually, you know what? I really want to do a UV build at some point, just for kicks.
Especially as you've got the period case as well.
Oh, what you thinking? Do it in my Cooler Master. That would be a really good shout back to the Cooler Master, actually. What would be super cool, actually, is I've got pictures of my my old Cooler Master case when it was decked out with UV. I'm not going to bring them up now because it's probably going to take me half an hour to find them because my pictures aren't sorted. But what would be really cool is if I did a project where I tried to recreate my computer as it was in 2005. Yes. That'd be cool.
Just without the dual Opterons.
No. I was running a heckin' Thoroughbred. Athlon XP Thoroughbred, baby.
Oh, back in the days when you could overclock with a pencil.
Well, no, that was after that, but we were still, even still, it was just. Well, no, we were doing it was a bit of FSB and a bit of multiply. You had to do a bit of both, or it helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these days
it was a case that you could literally draw new traces on the CPU with a pencil.
How late was it when you could still do that? Because that was Pentium 1 era pencil overclocking.
Oh well, I did it on my XP 3200 plus.
Really, as late as that?
Yeah,
because that was what, Barton core. I think it was Barton. So? Yeah. The Thoroughbreds were the overclocking monsters. The Bartons, I seem to remember, were slightly less because they were right at the end of the XP days.
They were already reasonably close to the maximum anyway. Like modern Ryzen.
Well, yeah.
AMD repeats itself.
Yes. Well, in a way, is that not better that you're getting a product that is already giving all it has to give instead of a CPU where you have to overclock the balls off of it to actually get what it's capable of?
Yes.
Although now we're getting into the realms of the Intel reliability discussion, aren't we, I suppose?
It depends on what the sort of 5-year RMA rate is. So I presume the 5-year RMA rate on Ryzen is below whatever the industry standard level is, which I presume is something like 1% or 5%. You know, it's a case of you expect 5% of all processors sold to end up requiring RMA, say. And if you run that close to the edge, do you suddenly see your RMA rate go up to 15%? If so, obviously that's far too much, and you'd downclock it.
Yeah.
And you'd, I presume, rewrite the Aegis? No?
Agisa. Yeah.
You'd rewrite the Agisa to give much less voltage and things like that. So I presume by the fact that we've not seen that, and we've seen, something like 16 different Agisa versions since Zen 2's launch.
They are constantly fiddling with it, aren't they?
Yeah, the RMA rate hasn't been higher than they expected. So yeah, I don't know, but I guess if you look at like Threadripper Pro and Ryzen Pro, they're about 100 megahertz lower clocked than the equivalent sort of consumer version. So I wonder if it is a case of they've downclocked it a smidgen just to increase
Oh, were they? I thought the Pro
Mm,
chips were slightly higher.
the Thunderbolt. No, that's not what it is. The Threadripper, the Threadripper Pros,
Hmm.
the new Threadripper Pros, which I think are OEM only via Lenovo currently.
Yeah.
Um, those ones, they're like 100 or 200 megahertz lower
Oh, fair
on
enough.
the peak boost clock. That's what it's called,
Yes.
on the boost clock. So yes, I presume that's kind of a case of they've gone, we'll shove in ever so slightly less voltage, and we'll go for a slightly lower clock, which assumes then, which I also presume is because they expect the chips to be run at effectively 100% load for more of the time.
Yes,
The clock
if it's
workstation.
actually going into a professional space that's actually going to run them at full tilt, yeah. Because
Yeah.
obviously, most gamers are not running their CPUs at full tilt. Not all
Mm.
gamers. Yes, I know. I'm sure there's someone out there who's running folding at home. But
Hi.
however, the majority of people are not topping out their CPUs in games.
Yes.
So obviously, you're not actually going to rag it as hard as someone who's sitting there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to buy Threadripper Pros, drop them into a workstation that's doing 3D rendering that could be in a render farm that's sitting at 100% 24/7, and
Yeah.
that's a very very different workload to sitting in a
Yeah.
gaming rig where you're bouncing up and down all the time with a gaming workload. Because with a gaming workload, your CPU is generally speaking, it is just going to bounce constantly. You've probably got
Mm.
one thread that's going to max out, but yeah, on the whole,
Especially if you're playing flight sim.
yes.
There
Although
was
I
a
think a lot of people are not fully certain what flight sim actually does yet. They're still learning about it, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. But yes, there was apparently an issue with flight sim getting completely shred locked on a single thread.
Oh, really? Oof.
Yes. So it's a case that it didn't really matter what CPU you had, you were CPU
Uh,
limited because
yeah.
a single thread was getting locked at 100%.
Oof.
What it was specifically, what part of the engine it was, no idea. But yeah, apparently it's something that Microsoft was aware of and released a patch or something like last week. So we'll see if that fixes stuff in the majority of cases.
Hmm.
Yes.
That'll be interesting. I've got a client who wants a new computer specifically for Flight Sim 2020, and yeah, we were waiting for the 3080
Yes.
because he declared that he wanted to build it when when we were like a week out from the 3080 launch, and I was like, I don't know how that's going to go, and I was completely right about that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, we're now stuck in that no man's land of now we have no idea what to do because no one knows when the hell you'll be able to get a 3080.
Mm.
Which actually interestingly leads us into the topic of the 3080 launch because yeah,
Yeah.
that was that's a bit sucky as far as I'm concerned. See, about 2 months ago, I did a build that on the channel is called it was the Corsair 275R AF build, and I put a 2080 Super in it. And at the time when that video went out, I had a load of people in the comments that were just like, 30 series launching imminently, you fool. And I'm just like, okay, firstly, it's still a month before the announcement happens. And then it's going to be another month, or well, then it's going to be like another sort of 2 or 3 weeks before after the announcement that they actually launch. And then they could just suddenly flash out of stock, and then we can't get hold of them for another month, maybe. So
Mm.
suddenly, the build that the customer has their wallet open and is ready to do today is going to be delayed for a minimum of 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
So we just built it, which is the sensible thing
Absolutely.
to do. And hey ho,
Absolutely.
I was bang on the money because yeah, the 3080, it was basically luck of the draw. I mean, I assume that there's some people out there other than YouTubers who actually successfully got one. I don't know if they actually have
Mm.
them or not. But yeah, the things are
Oh,
like hen's teeth.
absolutely.
And do we know when they're coming back into stock yet? Does anyone know?
I haven't heard anything specifically, other than EVGA said that they were expecting several thousand of their cards to be restocked this week in the US.
That's a
So
good
it's a case
start.
that and EVGA kind of, I guess they position themselves more towards the top end of the market
Yeah,
generally.
they're certainly considered one of the higher end ones. You know, you're paying a bit extra and you get the big ass cooler on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
As
was
opposed,
looking.
that much being said, you know, Palette are notorious for sticking a big ass cooler on their cards, and Palette are usually the cheapest ones you can get.
And they're always the ones that I buy.
Yes. How loud's the coil whine on your Palette 980s?
I have no idea. I never heard it.
Yeah, because your headphones are on, not because it's quiet.
Also,
I genuinely
never heard.
thought your 980 was broken the first time I heard that bang on to load. I heard it straight away, and I'm just like, I looked at your computer and I was like, is that your card? And you're like, yes. What of it? You know,
It's faster than yours. What do you mean?
that's true. It's true.
But yes, and but no, it's a case of you never really notice when the fans are at like 75% minimum all of the time.
True that. Yeah. Yes, of course. That's where your SLI. Of course, that everyone is also sad about SLI going away, but then SLI has been dead for a long time, so who cares about that?
Yes, I'm sad that it never took off.
Yeah,
Like, as in, it didn't take off
yeah,
15 years. But I can see why it didn't, because it was a case that, yes, I could buy 2 last generation 70, XX70 cards. And I could buy one at launch, and then a few years later, when the next series comes out, I can buy another XX70 card to match my one, and
pick up,
SLI it and get some more
yeah,
performance.
pick
But it
up a
was
second-hand one that's identical to your current one or something.
yeah, but it's kind of the case of, you look at it from Nvidia's point of view. Why are they going to encourage you to buy second-hand cards? Why are they going to spend highly talented people's time writing SLI drivers, tweaking games to give big performance gains with SLI, when they could have those people writing drivers for new cards to sell you new cards to make money?
Yeah, I was watching the WAN show on Sunday, and they basically were saying the same thing as we are now, you know, which is a case of, you know, we're sad that it went away because it's really cool, but at the same time, we're not remotely surprised that it went away, because for the vast majority of people, it doesn't make sense, and it definitely doesn't make sense for developers or Nvidia. So yeah,
Exactly. And I think the thing that so many people, gamers, forget is that 30% of people, 35% of people in the latest Steam survey are playing on a 1063 gigabyte.
yeah. The average is always much lower than people think. This is something that this actually came up where I've been watching. Quite a few of my friends are Twitch streamers, and obviously they're all talking about pre-orders for the new Xbox and the new PlayStations at the moment. And certainly one of my friends in particular, shout out to Slinkenage, check him out on Twitch and everywhere else. He was saying that has zero interest in buying either of the new consoles at the moment, because the PlayStation 5, there's nothing on there that he's personally interested in playing. He's not interested in any of their exclusives, so why the hell would he bother buying the console for it? And he's not interested in buying a Series X because he has a PC, and obviously Microsoft are playing the ecosystem game. And a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people that keep going, so, oh, Microsoft, they've got no exclusives, no one's going to buy that Xbox. You're missing the point. Microsoft have got their fingers in all the pies. No matter what you're doing, some of that money is going to Microsoft. That's the game they're playing, whether or not you buy one. Yes, exactly. So you know, so Slink was just like, oh, I'm not going to buy one because I've got a PC kind of thing, and you know, and he was sort of saying, I don't, you know, and quite a few people were like, sort of, yeah, why would you buy a Series X if you can just play it on PC and stuff? And one of the things I pointed out is I was like, because a gaming PC is a luxury item, and a lot of people don't have that. You know, like me, I'm a computer repair shop, and I get lots and lots of average families bringing in their computers for repair, And most of those families, they have one or two typical 13 or 15-inch laptops with integrated Intel graphics on them.
Yeah.
They don't have a graphics card at all. So obviously most families have got a couple of tablets or a couple of laptops with no discrete graphics on them, which means gaming is more or less not an option unless you want to play Minecraft at 26 frames a second. So for them, they're just like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to spend $1,000 on a gaming PC, this big complicated gaming PC that will need to be set up at a desk somewhere in the house that we don't have a spot for? Or are we going to buy an Xbox for a couple of £100 and plug it into the big TV that we've got?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a no-brainer. So that's where your Series X sales are going. So, a lot of people are just like, oh, well, we don't understand what Microsoft are playing at. That's because you're not the target audience of the Xbox anymore. And that might, if you heard me say that, you might be like, hold on a minute, I'm a gamer. What do you mean I'm not the target audience? Well, if you've got a gaming PC, you're not the target audience for the Xbox. That's basically it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not an attack. It's not an insult. It's nothing. It's just the way it is. If you've got a gaming PC, you don't need an Xbox.
Potentially.
Yes. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy one. I'm just saying that you are. Yes, certainly. If you're struggling to understand the value in it, then you are. Then therein lies the issue.
Yes, I think the thing is, well, that kind of proves the point. The Series X, assuming that all of the stuff that Microsoft has said in its marketing material is correct, they are aiming for a £500 device or $500 device to give you 4K 60, including ray tracing. To get 4K 60, including ray tracing on a PC, you're looking at a £700 graphics card.
I'll still believe it when I see it. I think that they will get. I think they'll get a decent way toward it. I think they'll do something that I'll look at and be like, okay, that's pretty good. But to say that they'll actually hit those targets in anything other than something really basic. I mean, I said the other day quite scathingly, I said, 4K 60 frames a second in Super Lucky's Tale doesn't impress me. Because obviously, infamously, when the Xbox One X came out, the 4K Xbox, their release title for that was Super Lucky's Tale in 4K. And I'm just like, that's got pastel graphics. I'm not impressed,
oh, absolutely. I think the Xbox One X, as through its life, has drastically improved, though. Because, Wolfenstein, The Last Colossus, Wolfenstein 2, runs at 4K 60 plus.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good then, yeah.
The console that's using a CPU that's 7 years old, 8 years old, is a freaking Jaguar APU as its CPU, is pushing 4K 60.
It really goes to show that low-level hardware access still counts for a lot, because that's always been how consoles seem to get so much out of so little. Back in the tail end of the Xbox 360 days, the Xbox 360 was 256 megs of RAM, I think it was.
I think it was 768 total system memory shared between RAM and VRAM.
Yeah. Suffice to say, though, you look at that, man, you're like, how the hell are they running Skyrim on that? I remember when Skyrim first came out, I saw the launch trailer for it, and I'm like, and I was like, there's no way that's going to look like that on release. And I was absolutely proven wrong. I mean, absolutely, it looks better on PC, because of course it would. However, the Xbox version of it still looked pretty darn good. And I stood corrected on that. And again, it's just because they had that low-level hardware access. And I kind of thought that would be diminishing these days. I thought the modern consoles, as they got closer and closer to PCs, that advantage of low-level hardware access would be diminishing as they started layering abstraction layers on top of each other. Because obviously the reason why stuff runs slower on a PC than on a console is that when you run a game on a PC, you're going through a dozen software or abstraction layers. So the the game is talking to DirectX. DirectX is talking to the graphics driver. The graphics driver is talking to Windows. Windows is then talking to the kernel. The kernel then talks to the hardware. You're going through layers and layers before you actually get down to the silicon. Whereas a console, the reason why they run so much faster is you're cutting right down to the hardware. There's going to be a couple of layers in there, sure, but it's certainly a significantly shorter route.
The other thing, obviously, you can do is if you go, oh, we know this hardware executes X maths faster than Y maths, you make your game use X maths, not Y maths.
Yeah, and of course,
on a PC, you can't do that. You have to code in the spec. You have to say, this is the DirectX spec. We are writing it inside the DirectX spec, or it won't work on random graphics card, or random processor, or random monitor configuration. Because there's 1,000,000,005 combinations of computer you can have, you have to write inside the spec, and you can't go, this is faster for this GPU, so I'm writing it this way. You can't do that. Whereas obviously where you've got 7 million consoles and every one of them is identical, you can go, we are doing whichever way is the fastest to do this, not which way is the standard or logical way. We're doing it the fast way, the way that processes quickest on this hardware.
And I think the irony is that certainly last generation, so say the release Xbox and the release PS4, not the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X. Obviously, there we were in the 1080p era, and a 1080p capable gaming PC was pretty easy to build, and still is. And one that can actually run 1080p at high graphics was very easy to build. Whereas also now we're talking about going into 1440p and 4K. The difficulty curve, the performance requirement to get to that starts spiking drastically. So, so I think that's possibly why I'm actually almost feeling a little bit envious here, because the consoles actually seemingly have a much easier and cheaper route to that. Whereas to now, it's still cheap and easy to build a gaming PC. You can still build a 1080p gaming PC for what, 500 or 600 quid?
Power only, you could quite competently do something like that.
Yeah, reasonably so.
I would have said so, but considering the way that processors and power supplies have gone the past,
that's true. Yeah, at the end of 2019, before the world exploded. Yeah,
indeed.
I mean,
before
obviously,
human malware.
I like to think that those days will come back. I think they will. I think this is just a phase. So, for the sake of the argument, let's pretend they will. So yeah, you could build a 1080p gaming PC for not a huge amount of money. So therefore, and that 1080p gaming computer would give you likely give you better graphical detail than the last gen consoles. And on top of that, you were then buying into probably Steam, and I guess the Epic Store. Both of which are giving you access to very cheap games, which is obviously another big advantage of the PC.
Or if you're really strapped for cash, you just play the games that are given to you free weekly on Epic and EA.
Yeah,
Origin, that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's right.
You sell your soul, but you get free games.
Yeah. So whereas now, if we're now talking about a gaming PC versus the next gen consoles, suddenly you're saying, okay, well, that gaming PC is going to need to be doing a minimum of 1440p if you want to be competitive. We could probably still wave away 4K because arguably 4K is still a bit of a niche area. A lot of stuff is probably going to be upscaled anyway. We don't know yet. But
because One X wasn't upscaled or anything like that. It was native res at like 3200, 1800.
Yeah, that's fair.
99% of stuff. Some stuff was the whatever the hell 4K is, 2160p. Those numbers which escape my head.
Yes.
Was actually at that, and then dynamic resing as needed.
Yeah.
But it was only going down to say 75% of 4K, which is still way above 1440p. So it's kind of a case of, even then, previous generation, we're still talking about above 1440p resolutions at 30 or 60 FPS,
Yeah.
depending on title. So it's kind of a case of, assuming, and especially considering we're going from the Jaguar APU cores to Zen 3 cores. No, we're not. Zen 2 cores for the processor, which is orders of magnitude improved. We're going to SSDs with special hubs, with special source decoding and encoding of data for the SSDs to make them even faster.
That's
And
going to
then
be
we're going
amazing if that actually gets used properly.
Yeah, and we're going to RDNA 2 graphics cards as opposed to, freaking probably Tahiti graphics base. Hello, yes, I would like 400 watts per frame, please.
Oof.
Oh,
Yeah.
ABB.
Yeah.
But that scaling, even if it isn't 4K 60 with ray tracing all of the time, it's a 4K 30 with ray tracing. That's still orders of magnitude more than most people can do. And if you go, actually, I haven't got the capital for that, you go, okay, give me $35 a month. You get a console effectively for free, plus you get Xbox Game Pass and EA All Access. And it's
a very good offer. And like, speaking as someone who literally this week bought 1440p monitors and hooked them up to a I don't want to say a past it, but certainly an aging GTX 1070, and it can do it. But all of a sudden, I'm like, oof, if I really wanted to see these monitors flat out, I would be needing something like a 2070, or when it comes along, maybe the 3060 might be the new 1440p monster kind of thing. And the 3060, do we have a price for that yet? I'm guessing it's going to be.
It's not even been announced.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's going to be That's going to be £300 or £400, or
Wow.
maybe.
No.
You don't think so?
Only because the 3070 is listed at £470.
Yeah, that's true. It's got to be lower. So the 3060.
So it'd be like 370, 350.
That's fair. So like, say $400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go with
But then,
350.
Yeah,
so $400. That's sort of range.
The astonishing value for money being offered by the 30 series really shakes up this argument. But even still, that is half the budget of this theoretical PC to go toe to toe with the next gen consoles. And if you want to put a half decent CPU in that, your CPU is going to be a minimum of £200 for a modest 3600, which is a modest CPU. That's £200 or $200 or so. So that's, if you've got that plus let's go to dollars. So let's say it's $200 for a 3600, $400 for a 3060 when that comes out. That's $600 gone already before you've done anything else. And right now, a half decent PSU is going to cost you another $100. That's $700 already. We haven't even bought a case or motherboard yet. So yeah, and so suddenly that console is looking to be astonishingly good value for money.
Yeah,
and that's something that we haven't seen in a while, actually, because normally consoles on release, they come out and you see the price of them, and you're like, oof, I think I'm going to wait 6 months. Whereas right now, it's just like, that's pretty good value for money. Do you reckon absolutely. Microsoft dropped, or no? Who announced their price first? It was Microsoft, wasn't it?
Microsoft. Yeah.
Do you think Sony dropped the price of the PlayStation before announcing the price?
I think
they did. Yeah. I think because everyone thought it was going to be more expensive, and I think Microsoft announced. Sorry, carry on.
I think Sony is really going to struggle to cover their costs because I'm presuming they're selling the console at maybe a 30% loss, 40% loss, something in that region, because the estimated bill of materials was saying like $750, I saw.
Yeah.
And they're trying to sell that for $400, was it? $480?
Yeah.
Something like that. So they're losing between $200 and $300 per console if the estimated bill of materials is correct. That's not including R&D time.
Yeah, and the R&D on like the SSD stuff alone is going to be a lot, because like you could probably say that it was AMD putting a lot of the money into the chips and stuff. I don't know what kind of split there is for R&D on the CPU, like how much of that Sony pays for and how much of it AMD pays for. But like AMD sure as hell went developing that SSD for them, So
well, it's not particularly in AMD's wheelhouse.
No. I mean, obviously, there would have been discussion there, because obviously you want the GPU to be able to talk to the SSD and stuff like that. However,
absolutely.
But even still, So there's I definitely think that the PS5 was going to be more expensive. Then Microsoft suddenly dropped an absolutely mind-blowing price, and Sony were just like, I guess we've got to drop the price or die.
Yeah. In a sense, based purely off of market share, it's surprising that Sony blinked.
Yeah.
Because the Xbox has, I think, purely based off of sales, the Xbox has less than 10% of console market share.
And also, it's like whoever it was at Microsoft that said, we don't consider Sony to be a competitor, and everyone laughed at them. And it's just like, well, no, they're two different products. It's just, again, Microsoft are playing the ecosystem game, whereas the PS5, if you want those sweet exclusives, then you're buying a PlayStation. That is like that's the thing. It's not really. I don't think it's mutually exclusive in a lot of cases. I think, I think most people are either going to buy both, or they're going to buy the place. Well, I don't know, actually. I want to say well, the problem is, what I was about to say is counter to the argument that I was trying to make. They're either going to buy both, or they're going to buy a PlayStation. But by that argument, PlayStation is obviously doing better than Xbox. But again, then Microsoft have just played this amazing long-term game of ecosystem. And like with the recent acquisition of ZeniMax, it's just like, lol, Microsoft have got 2 exclusives coming out on the PlayStation. Because there are... I can't remember which games they are, but there's 2 of the games that are coming in that are under the ZeniMax umbrella, that were going to be PlayStation exclusives. And obviously when Microsoft bought, everyone was just like, have they just stolen those? However, Microsoft were just like, no, we'll honour that. That's going to be PlayStation exclusive. Because Microsoft still get money when you buy that game. That's the masterstroke.
Microsoft get money.
Yeah, that's the masterstroke of what Microsoft are doing. And this is why, when Sony were being little bitches about cross-platform, and Microsoft were just like, yeah, Nintendo, you want to do cross-platform and stuff. Microsoft were making friends with everyone, because now Microsoft get money whatever you're doing. And I said it earlier on in the podcast, but it's a masterstroke. And this is what they've been doing all the while with their software as a service, with Windows 10, with Microsoft Office. Love it or hate it, it's genius.
Oh, absolutely. It just surprises me that they're happy to go for the small share from, the very small share that they'll get selling a game on a PlayStation, and they're happy to just keep that as that very small share, but they won't get 100% of the share on Windows for home users. They've just given up on that. They don't care whether you buy it or not, basically. And it just surprises me the difference in scale there must be on the number of games sold on a PlayStation, that they would get a 1% cut or a 5% cut compared to 100% cut of Windows, and how few Windows licenses get sold in DIY and so on. It just shows how, completely changing the topic of the conversation, but it just shows how insignificant the DIY market is for people building their own computers compared to people buying games on consoles.
I wonder how much of that boils down to just hearts and minds as well, because obviously a large part of the Microsoft strategy, especially with Windows 10 being a free upgrade and stuff like that, was hearts and minds. Get people onto your product. Because then people will... I don't want to say they're trapped in your product, but that's certainly what they're using. Excuse my hiccups.
Maybe. I don't feel like it was so much a hearts and mind thing for the Windows 10 specifically. I feel it was more a case that they were just trying to kill XP in 7. Do as
Yes,
much as they can to kill XP and 7. They do not want to support an operating system for 15 years. Let
absolutely.
it die.
Yeah,
Move on. You will
yeah.
move to 10. 10 will be free. Just move, please.
Yes,
Make it easier
that's
for us to
certainly the
support.
case with killing 7 off, because they absolutely didn't want another XP, even though to an extent that is happening anyway, but not nearly as badly as with XP, because they have actually killed 7 support. So they've already managed to wash their hands of it now. There's still a lot of people out there running 7. I still keep seeing Windows 7 screenshots, and I'm just like, why are you on 7? Fine, whatever. In before, hate in the comments. Come at me, I'm ready. But yeah, however, by comparison with XP, it was even worse than that, because not only did they have so many people who were still running Windows XP, but they were still roped into providing support for it. Whereas with Windows 7, they still got a load of people running Windows 7. I mean, actually, I don't suppose you know off the top of your head what the percentage of Windows 7 users on the Steam survey was, were you? I'm going to look that up super quick.
No, I don't. But
Steam survey. But however, what was I about to say? Oh, yeah. However, it's not nearly so bad, because even if there are still people out there running Windows 7, at least they're not obligated to support it, because they've already cut that support.
yeah, not in anywhere near the same fashion. Based off of browsers that have visited the top 100,000 websites, or possibly top 1 million websites, Windows 10 is on 73.76% of computers. Then it's Windows 7 on 19.44. Then it's 8.1 on 4.47.
Those are really good stats, actually,
Then
aren't
Vista on 0.41.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm just looking at the Steam survey.
XP is 0.82. Good God, there are 0.82% of people who are still browsing the internet on XP.
I would wager that though they're in non-Western countries, shall we put it?
But for that to only account for 0.82 surprises me.
Oh yeah, okay, that's true, yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, that would actually inflate the figure even more, wouldn't it? Yeah. And incidentally, on the Steam survey, Windows 10 is on 88% and Windows 7 64 is 5.2%. I thought it would be higher than that. I thought among gamers you'd have more elitists that are just like, no, Windows 7 is better. But no, the percentage is actually a lot lower than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When did High Sierra and Mojave come out for macOS?
Ooh. High Sierra release.
Because 10.15, whatever 10.15 is called, went from 0% August last year of macOS users to 57.5% of macOS users this year. So in a year, they've hit nearly 60% of people upgrading.
Yeah, and again, I mean, macOS always gets a good uptake because they've got free updates and reasonably aggressive but not intrusive updates. The Windows 10 update program was always considered intrusive in that it badgered you. It was just like, hey, have you updated yet? Have you updated yet? Have you heard there's a new operating system? Have you updated yet? And it pissed people off. A lot of people didn't upgrade because they felt like they were getting hard sold on it. Whereas macOS is just like, hey, there's a free update available. We're just going to leave this notification here. And people were just like, sure, click. But yeah, so High Sierra was 2017 and Mojave was 2018. And I think Catalina, which is the latest version, Catalina has had a slightly slower uptake because Catalina killed 32-bit support, which meant a lot of people were just an absolute, no, I cannot update because I'm running, for example, there's a lot of people out there running Microsoft Office 2013 on macOS. Because they haven't had to switch to Office 365 yet and pay that monthly fee. And Office 2013 on macOS is 32-bit. So if you've got Office 2013 on macOS, you cannot install Catalina because you'll lose Office. And that is actually one of the reasons why on Macs that come into my shop for repair, I actually still install Mojave by default, unless the customer has requested Catalina, or I know specifically that they are absolutely not going to be using any old applications. But a lot of my clients are still running Office 2013, and so I cannot upgrade them to Catalina. So yeah, and it's an interesting move. But yeah, I think Office is the only thing. But then there are also lots of people out there that just generally still run some old software, and yeah, losing 32-bit support creates quite a divide. What have you spotted?
Office on macOS is a lot more expensive than Office on Windows.
Can you not just get it on Office 365?
Oh, you can do, but I was looking at the buy it once, own forever price. To be a more fair comparison. It's like double.
Yeah, it sucks. And that's why there's a lot of people still running Office 2013.
And there aren't even, and looking at Amazon, there aren't the, $10, $12, $15.
You can't find the grey market keys for Office for Mac, which is weird. I'm not sure why. I assume it's not included in TechNet, because obviously that's where all those dodgy keys come from.
Yeah, why would it be?
Because you're testing your software. I don't see why it isn't. I guess.
Macs aren't used in professional environments, quote unquote.
Oof.
Macs are only used for pretty pictures.
Oof. But I'm not going to argue your point.
No. I mean, in a sense of, I'm surprised there's word processors available for Macs.
Well, Apple have their own. Apple made Pages, and yeah,
absolutely. And I feel Pages was going after Google Docs, not Microsoft Office.
I don't know what the hell Pages was going after.
I mean, other than being completely sodding broken.
Yeah,
like
because
almost all Apple Cloud is.
Yeah, because Pages is a bizarre mix of desktop publishing and word processing, and I don't know what Apple's plan there was, because I think they were trying to pitch it at kids doing their homework. Because the thing is, obviously, when kids are doing their homework and stuff like that, they want inline pictures and stuff like that. And Apple have this idea that people are at home making their own magazines for school homework or college homework or something like that. And Word is not very good at that. It can do it. It's just not very good at it, because obviously Microsoft have got Microsoft Publisher, which is desktop publishing, but and very few people own that because that's part of Office Pro. So I think Pages ended up getting a weird mix of desktop publishing features for that reason. But also, I think as an extension of that, it feels very odd to try and do word processing on it, because it's trying to say, you say sort of like, hey, I want to start typing. It's like, where on the page do you want to type? And I'm like, I don't know, the top left. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So,
oh no. I'm sorry, that sounds like you were just arguing with Siri. Siri, please open a Pages document and start typing. Where would you like to type in the Pages document? In the top left!
Yes. So, and then obviously they also made the absolute bombshell issue of just the fact that I say it's a bombshell mistake of not saving as a Word document, because it can export as a Word document, and obviously they can't make it export as a Word document by default, because that's one of those things where it's just like, well, you just can't do that. That's Microsoft's format.
It would be amazing though if Pages and Slides and whatever the other one's called,
Pages, Keynote, and Sheets. And Numbers.
And Numbers. Yeah. If they exported as open document format documents.
I'm almost tempted to say that Apple should have actually just said, you know what, we'll offer that on first run. We'll offer to export as Office formats for compatibility, which would have been a massive concession. But actually, I think that would have actually drastically improved the uptake of Pages, Numbers, and Keynote to an less so Keynote, because Keynote has been around for much longer than Pages and Numbers, but certainly at least with Pages and Numbers, because if they had done that, then I think a lot of people would have been sort of been like, oh, cool, so I can use this program and all of my friends on Windows will be able to read my documents by default. Whereas a lot of people, I think, a lot of my customers come in and say, oh, I need Word on my Mac because my friends can't read my Pages documents. And I'm like, Pages can export as a Word document. They're like, can it? And then you have to explain to them how you change save as or export, because it's not doing that by default. Yeah. And like to power users, people will be like, "That's really dumb," and it's just like, no, that's how people think. They don't know. They don't know these things.
Yeah. Well, not just that. You go to the average person using Word in an office. They don't know it's saving as a Word document.
Oh yeah, they think it's saving in Word.
Well, not that specifically, but the fact of you say to them, "Oh, this is saving as a Word document, a specific format for Word," they go, no, it's saving as a letter.
Yes.
Kind of thing, if that makes sense. Because why would they need to know there's a difference? Why would they know there's a difference and all of that? But so obviously the fact of the huge difference suddenly because there's Pages and there's Word documents.
I think that's the biggest gap in general computer knowledge among the average user. Because there's lots of cornerstones of computer knowledge, like the basics, Computers 101, stuff that you should be taught in schools and stuff like that, like dragging and dropping, and the concept of picking up files and dropping them onto other windows and stuff like that, maximizing and minimizing, the simple stuff. However, something that a lot of people I find really don't understand is the concept of file types or file formats, whichever you prefer, and the concept that a program, or the vast majority of programs, do not contain your user data. Your document is not saved in Word. You are using Word to open the document. Word is the tool, it's the magnifying glass that you are using to study the document. And the vast majority of customers, when a lot of customers, they say to me, oh, I want to, like if we're backing up their computers, say, and I'm like, cool, what data do you need saved? And they're like, oh, I've got lots of documents in Word. I'm like, okay, where are those saved? Are they in your documents folder? No, they're in Word. I'm like, okay, where do you put them in Word? You get the idea. And this problem is exacerbated by some programs that squirrel away their data in app data and places like that. Like case in point, I had a nasty one for this the other day. I needed to back up some information from a MacOS hard drive, and I was like, no problem, we'll plug it into my laptop, copy the files off. The problem is the customer had a load of data saved in Bento. Bento, for those of you who don't know, is the modern version. It's the modern consumer version of FileMaker Pro, which is it's a light database / contact management system. So it does diaries, contact management, client relationship databases, that kind of thing. Just some, to a certain extent, just organization. The issue there was with. So the customer said, I've got all this information in Bento. And I'm like, okay, where is that? Where I don't know Bento very well. Where does it save its data? And they're like, in Bento. And I'm like, okay. And the problem is that the data literally was in Bento. I don't know where it was. And what I actually had to do was I had to take my MacBook that I use for macOS backups, and I had to boot this macOS hard drive in a USB 3 dock. I had to boot from it. I had to boot over USB. It was awful. So about an hour later, after it had booted, I was able to open Bento. And then about an hour after that, when Bento had opened, I was able to actually start doing file and export and stuff like that. But again, that was an issue there where the data was just completely inaccessible. And that I feel also makes these things worse. I think every program should always tell you where it is saving its information, so that information can be easily exported or backed up to prevent loss.
And it should, yes, there is also the case of people don't understand yes, they don't understand because they were never told that folders are a thing. That there are files, there are folders, and you can have folders inside folders. And, and kind of just the fact of no one at any point ever seems to have taught people file hierarchy. And sort of just the fact of folders exist and stuff can go in a folder and a folder can go in a folder, and you can name those things whatever is convenient for you to name it, for you to find stuff. So you can have pictures, My Day Out 2021, put pictures in there, and then you can have another one which was my day at the Steam Fair, put pictures in there, and they can both be in a folder called My Pictures. And
I think another issue is, I think at one point people were learning that, like in the late 90s and early noughties, in the days of 9X, I think people were learning that because that was how you used a computer. Everything was files and folders, and you had your floppy disks where you saved your documents and stuff like that. But then we went into this new era where, certainly with the modern day, with social media and the internet and stuff like that, and then mobile devices, tablets, we suddenly shifted away from files and folders. Whereas, like with a mobile device, if you're actually using the file manager, one could argue that you're doing it wrong. Or certainly as far as the average user is concerned, if you're trying to teach the average user how to use their iPad or their Android phone or Android tablet, you don't want to tell them where the file manager is, because they'll start dropping stuff into some random Android system folder. You don't want them to go anywhere near the file manager. And by that extent, when they're saying sort of, oh, how do I copy photos from my laptop onto my thing? Can I use a USB stick? And you're like, no. Whereas normally you'd say, yes, yeah, absolutely, you want to use a USB stick because that teaches you to drag and drop your files onto drives and stuff like that. Whereas as soon as they want to put it on their phone, you're like, no.
Plug the phone into the computer and drag and drop it there.
Yes, I suppose you could do that. Yep. That's
drag and drop it into the DCIM folder. Yep. The DCIM folder, which will be the same named folder as it is on their camera.
Yeah, and I think you can do that on an iPhone. You can definitely read from the DCIM folder on an iPhone. Yeah. Don't know if you can write to it.
Because why would you have access to your own files on an Apple product?
Quite so, yeah. Although that much being said, when it's set up correctly, iCloud is pretty tight. When it's set up correctly.
The problem is you basically need a degree in it.
Yes, that is also true. Actually, I relinquish my praise there just because iCloud could be good. It could be good, but
look at Google Drive. Look at Google Drive and look at Google Photos.
I think Google Drive has gone backwards. I think Google Drive made a mistake when it turned into backup and sync from Google, because at that point it started offering to save your desktop and documents and stuff like that, which is a noble endeavor because that's automatic backup of common directories. However, well, let me put it this way. I don't know if I'm going absolutely insane, but recently on my girlfriend's computer, she had her art folder, and that was sitting on her SSD, and she wanted that to be backed up. And so in Google Backup and File Sync, she had added that as a folder to back up. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. And so, but what the Backup and File Sync client had then done was it had uploaded it to Google Drive, but it was also duplicated within her Google Drive folder on the computer, which meant it was now taking up twice the space on her computer. And unless I'm going insane, that's what Google Drive does. It duplicates any folders it's backing up in the Google Drive folder that is also saved on your computer. and like, I don't know if you got an answer to this, and if you're going, I have no idea what you're talking about, then that's fine. Maybe I was just going insane.
Yes, that is my current response. I have no idea what you're on about.
However, at the very least, I'll get round to my main point on that, which is I think it was a mistake to add in the ability to add additional folders, because my answer to anyone who is using Google Drive is always to say treat it in the same way that Dropbox works. Is it in the Google Drive folder? Yes, it is backed up. If it is not in your Google Drive folder, it is not backed up. If you want it to be in, and then if you want to do something fancy, then you either do what I do, in which case my documents folder on all of my computers is empty. I don't put anything in there. I put it in Google Drive. Or you redirect your documents folder to Google Drive if you want to get fancy. And I feel like that's the correct answer to that. But I
would contend with that if that's the type of backup you're looking for, you shouldn't be using Google Drive. You should be using OneDrive, because that's how OneDrive is set up and is integrated into Windows.
Yeah, I don't like that integration because weird stuff can happen. I might be speaking just from lack of experience. However, let me put it this way. I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine who lost data when they were trying to get rid of OneDrive. They'd had a falling out with OneDrive. It doesn't matter why. The point is they didn't want to use it anymore. So they wanted to uninstall OneDrive from their computer. So they logged out from it and everything. And then they were like, right, cool, that's done. I don't want that. OneDrive folder, delete. And obviously, because their documents and desktop had been integrated into the OneDrive folder, they then nuked all of the data that was in documents and desktop. And so then obviously they then effectively deleted all of their data. Thankfully, the majority of it was sitting up in the cloud and they were able to download a large amount of it. But downloading directly off of the cloud is still clunky as hell. It downloads as a zip folder of unknown size that seems to take forever and a day. I don't know if, when you try and download something directly from Google Drive, if you try and download a big folder from Google Drive, it's really...
I never had that issue with OneDrive.
Okay.
It being slow to download documents.
Yeah,
I've had it ridiculously slow to share documents.
Yeah.
But I was also sharing a folder that had something like 75,000 files in it.
Okay, yeah. That's going to make things clunky, isn't it?
It was just it was a horrible situation where I should have just zipped the folder and shared a zip.
Yeah. I mean, with any of these situations, especially the one that I just explained, obviously in hindsight, it would have been very easy to say, oh, well, this is where you went wrong. But I mean, at the time, when he called me for help, all of the bad stuff had already happened. And it took me the first sort of hour of remote tech support to understand what had happened and to piece together the chain of events that had led to this occurring. And when I realized what had happened, I was like, oh no, kind of thing. Because I realized what had happened and I had to sort of say in the nicest possible way, this is your fault kind of thing. But at the same time, the fact that it was possible for this to happen, in my opinion, shows why it's a bad idea to set it up like that in the first place, unless you're a power user. And so that leads me back to my thing that whenever I'm suggesting that someone use cloud storage, I always say to them, don't try and use redirected folders or integrated folders or anything like that. Just keep it simple, like Dropbox. That's why, I always use Google Drive, not Dropbox. But one of the reasons why I've always loved Dropbox is it's in the name. It's a box that you drop stuff into. That's it. And anything that is in the box is copied to the cloud. That's it. And it's really simple to understand. You always know where everything is at any given time. There are no questions. There are no asterisks. There are no, but if it's set up in this way, then it might be over here kind of thing. Unless we get into the realm of sharing. But come on, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing I liked about OneDrive. is the fact that there is, well, as far as I can tell, there are no asterisks with it. If it is in the folders that you think it's in, it
That
is in
is,
those
yeah,
folders,
yeah.
and it is therefore backed up. The only folder that doesn't get backed up is the downloads folder, and you shouldn't be storing stuff in downloads, because downloads should be your transient
Expendable.
downloads.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, yeah. And I guess then last of all is the worst offender of all of them, which is iCloud, where where there's no guarantee that the information that you can see on your local computer is actually on your local computer. It could be local, it could be in the cloud, who knows? There's a little icon that will tell you which, but the average client, the average user has no idea what that little cloud icon means. And
And then most of the time, their computers don't have enough storage to store the information
yeah, and
that's on
that's how
on
Apple
their
got stuck
computer.
in that situation in the first place. A lot of people, I legitimately have customers who come in with Macs where the fault description is literally unravel iCloud kind of thing, where just the whole thing is completely into a tangled mess, and they need someone just to straighten it all out. And that is quite a long and labor-intensive job to do that. And they always say, "Oh, why is it like this? That seems ridiculous." I'm like, "Well, when iCloud first came out, it was a synchronization platform. It started out with PhotoStream. You take a picture on your phone uploads that to PhotoStream. PhotoStream stores the last 30 days or 5 gigabytes, whichever is smaller, worth of photos. So therefore, then when you get home from your day or holiday, you then turn on your Mac, and that then downloads the pictures that are stored temporarily in PhotoStream. And because it's storing up to 30 days or 5 gigabytes of photos, as long as your computer is turned on once a month, it will grab all of those photos. So you now have wireless synchronization without the need for both computers to be online at the same time, which is awesome. And that was revolutionary at the time, because I don't think Google Photos existed at the time, or it didn't have not with the same amount of polish. But then we got the issue of people who didn't have a Mac at home and who were just storing everything on their device. And they were like, "Oh, but I don't have a Mac. So now what do I do if I lose my phone or my phone gets stolen or broken?" And Apple are like, fine, okay, for a small amount of money a month, we'll sell you 50 gigabytes of storage. So now you can store your entire library on the cloud, and it won't get deleted after 30 days. Cool, okay, no problem. Then Apple thought in their infinite wisdom that it would be a good idea to sell MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros that had 64 gigabytes of storage or 120 gigabytes of storage. Bearing in mind these are £1,000 laptops. And so then people had the problem of, I don't have enough storage to store my photos on my desktop laptop or computer kind of thing. So Apple were like, fine, we'll include this with iCloud Drive as well. So now you can store your documents in the cloud. And because there's not enough space on your computer, but there might be or there might not be, we'll have it so it automatically detects how much space is available. And some of the data will be uploaded to the cloud and some of it won't be. And some of the data will be uploaded to the cloud and removed from your computer. But because it's Apple, they can't tell you this. So you, generally speaking, don't actually know if something is appearing on your laptop but not actually on your laptop, unless you have a degree in iCloud.
Yeah,
And
I still
Apple
think
got sued over that because there's a guy who lost data.
Yeah, the very simple solution they could have had to that was everything is uploaded to iCloud. Everything created on your computer is saved on your computer. When you run out of space, iCloud pops up, says, "You've run out of space. This stuff is duplicated in your iCloud. Delete your local copy." Yes, no.
Yeah.
And you go through, and it gives you an option to clean up space.
In Apple's quest to make something that was completely seamlessly invisible, which of course is the Apple way, they ended up with something that was actually more of a confusing mess than making something that required more user interaction would have been. You could argue that only a small percentage of people actually encounter that issue, but I don't know. I see it quite often. And like
Yeah.
you see the telltale signs of it when someone has had a bad time with iCloud, because when you switch off iCloud on a Mac, again, iCloud does the desktop and documents integration style like OneDrive does. And when you switch it off, it makes a folder in your home folder called iCloud Archive, where all the information that was in those integrated folders gets moved to. And then it restores the original documents and desktop folders that you had before you switched on iCloud. And then obviously at that point you can open up that archive and grab your stuff out of it. Now again, theoretically that's quite a good idea. However, because it takes time for it to do that, there's always that telltale sign when someone has switched off iCloud Drive and it's gone into a grey box where it's pending while it separates everything out. And you see someone's home folder where they've got Archive 1, Archive 2, Archive 3, Archive 4, where they've turned it on and off repeatedly, not understanding what is actually happening. And then
I don't understand why it needs to do that at all.
Yeah.
Why can't it just go iCloud off? Everything is in the folders it was left in.
Yeah.
Surely that would have been
a better solution, because again, in that event you can often have people where the data has been duplicated 2, 3 or 4 times. And then this happens on some wretched MacBook Air with a 64 gigabyte SSD in it. Because why was that even a thing, you know? And that's why they come in going, oh, my space is full, and I don't know why. I don't have anything on it. It's like, you do, just duplicated many, many, many times. And yeah, but yeah. So ends my rant about iCloud.
Yes, absolutely. It's a mess.
Yes.
I think it's the simple answer to that.
On that bombshell, we're at an hour and 15 minutes. We only covered, I think, 2 things, maybe, on the list.
Exactly, which is what we expected.
Yeah. However, we have about an hour of stuff, so I think that's a good time to wrap up, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We could keep going, but
absolutely.
I think we want to target about an hour or so for these things to keep them accessible.
Yes, I think what we probably should do is at some point is just sit down and record a whole bunch of conversations. And then obviously we can just edit them
Release them over time.
Also, yeah.
We'll splice them together. Yeah.
Just bits of conversation can get edited in.
Yeah, that seems like an idea. We'll carry on fiddling with the format. But yeah, if you guys liked what you heard today, or if you have suggestions or changes to some stuff that you liked or disliked about this, let us know in the comments down below. I will be checking them, and we'll see how this does. And yeah, we'll probably, I think it's likely we'll keep doing it, especially if these prove popular. I don't know if this will be popular or not, to be honest. But we'll see.
Absolutely.
And again,
I think the next one will be aiming to do it as an actual streamed.
Yeah, if we get the format right, we'll definitely start doing live recordings. And to be honest, I think we could easily do that, because apart from a slightly bumpy start where I had a crash and then I had to redo the intro a bit because I got tilted by the crash, we've spoken solidly, and I think this is going to require almost 0 editing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, my name's Graham from Adamant IT. This is Caradog.
Not from Adamant IT.
But I guess associated with.
If you want to be associated with me, you may be.
Friend of the channel.
Absolutely. But yes, and I'm sure all of the support links and so on will be in the description, etc., etc.
No, they're on the end card. I don't tell people to read the description because no one reads the description. I say hang around for the end card, because you don't have to do anything. You just have to wait another couple of seconds, and the end card will appear. They're in the description as well.
The links aren't clickable there.
That's true. They're in the description as well. They're in this. For
lazy people who want to just click things.
Yeah, that's true. They're in the description, and they'll be on the end card. I should probably. The end card is on the screen now. I'm putting the end screen. And the end card is up now. This is the end of the show.
Goodbye.
Thank you for coming to our TEDx talk. This has been Two Guys Smack talking about tech for YouTube channel stats, the web show episode 1. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.